Lyn Bowtell has won awards for her music and hearts for, well, being her. She has one of the most glorious singing voices you will ever hear. She is the director of the Academy of Country Music, and she has a new single, Paper Cut, and it is always a great privilege, honor, and pleasure for me to talk to her. Hi, Lyn.
Oh, Sophie, you're beautiful. It's lovely to see
You are,
you.
look, everything I said was true. So I'm actually going to start with the Academy, because Senior Academy, those who don't know about the Academy of Country Music, there is Senior Academy in January, just before the Tamworth Country Music Festival. There is Junior Academy in about July every year. So you, at the time we're speaking, you've just had Senior Academy. How was it?
And it was good. We had such a great crop this year. I have to say the talent, wow, it was really through the roof. And we had a great team, we had a new team, new and old, some returnees and some brand newies. So it could have had its, I guess, challenges that it didn't. Like everything ran really smoothly and everyone got on beautifully. And the music was brilliant, I've got to say. Like I was just so proud of everybody. Yeah.
Having seen you in action at a Junior Academy rehearsal, I remember watching, I was in awe of the musical knowledge that you could just conjure from your brain and then communicate it to the students. So you watched a song being rehearsed, and then didn't see you taking any notes, and then you got up at the end and you're like, okay, second line from that second chorus, I want you to and there was the things that you were saying. I was thinking, not only do you have that knowledge to recognize it, but also to communicate it. I think that communication part is key. And I'm wondering if that's something that you've honed as a skill, or if you think you're a natural communicator.
Okay. Communicating to musos, it's different. And I think as I've spent more time in the role, and also I've been around such excellent musicians in my life, I've been very lucky. I've come to understand the lingo, and I don't pretend to know anything I don't know. So I will often talk about something and go, look, I don't know exactly what I'm looking for, but this isn't right. And I trust that they're going to know what to do because they're actually the experts.
Right.
And vice versa, when it comes to singing, I'm an expert in singing, but so they could say, we don't know what it is, but there's something not right. Is it the vibe? Is it you're not feeling it? Like if the tables were turned. So I think that a lot of the time it's about understanding your strengths and your weaknesses, and being a good director, from what I have gathered and what I think I'm getting better at each year, is not micromanaging and allowing people to shine in their own right and just giving them space to do that. And I think that I'm much better at seeing the overall picture than when I first started. I mean, I guess that's the nature of the beast. But I just remember Peter Winkler, who was my director at Academy. And when I came back as a group tutor and things like that, he was still directing. And I didn't know what he was doing, but he started pulling me aside and going, hey, I want you to sit in on this and see what I do. Because when he was ready to leave, he actually said to everyone, you should get Lyn to do it. So I didn't know that he was doing that. So I'm actually really grateful to him for that. And also understanding, I played in the band for a while. Like I played rhythm in the band, and I understood what it was like to look at a chart that's just numbers and go, what? And you've just played 20 songs and this is 21 and you can't remember anything about it. So there's that element of understanding that position to just look at it. I have no idea how this goes. And so kind of, I think that it's just having a little bit of a dabble in everything, being a little bit of a master of none is actually quite useful.
I would so contest that assessment. And also you saying about the musicians, oh, well, they're the experts. I've seen you play live. I know how many different instruments you can play and how well you can do it. But anyway, I'll leave that, and just also know that Academy is really intense. And the Junior Academy is shorter than the Senior Academy. So I was just aware of that part of it, and watching that rehearsal and then the performance on the Saturday, where things had completely transformed within a couple of days. And I know that Senior Academy rolls right into the Tamworth Country Music Festival. Now, when I saw you at Junior Academy, I thought, Lyn must need a Bex and a good lie down at some point here, because it was such intense work and also really long days. So particularly when you're rolling into Tamworth, how do you manage your energy levels through the month of January?
Vitamin B and ginseng. is pretty much.
Not a Bex and a good lie down, no.
I wish I could. No, I do have a good lie down when I can. I've learned to kind of monitor myself a little better. And this year we had a little cough go around and it went to my chest. So I had to kind of pull back on things that early on in the week. And actually, Beck Gracie was saying she listened back to an interview, a pre-record that I did, and she said I sounded pretty husky, but I was fine by Tuesday for my gigs and stuff because I rested. And it is a definite marathon academy. It tests your strength and your ability to kind of keep going. But one thing that you see you don't get outside of academy, because everyone goes off into their own little worlds, is we're in a bubble and everyone's just so freaking happy to be there. Everyone's really happy to be there because they're not at work. They love their family, but they don't have to look after their family. You don't even have to make a meal. We get fed and looked after and all the things. So it is a little bit like a camp for crazy musos, and we just have so much joy working together. I think that when you find your tribe like that, when you see a mirror and you see yourself in somebody else, you go, oh, I do that too. Oh my gosh. We are a strange little unique mob, us musicians and artists. And so getting us together, we end up, energizing each other when someone's a bit flat. And I think that for me, I get so much out of seeing those massive turnarounds that I see, and songs come to life that have been written the week before or 2 days before, and we have to produce them up from the ground up. And I love that feeling. I love that sense of accomplishment, and talking to the student after and going, you're happy with that, and yeah, I love that. I can't believe how good it sounds. It's better than I imagined. Or can we go a different way? And it's definitely challenging, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal thing to see, actually, and I was really lucky to see that rehearsal phase, so I could appreciate how much work you were putting in before that performance. But during this year's Tamworth Country Music Festival, you of course launched your new single, Paper Cut. How was your festival generally? How many shows did you end up playing?
I played 2 shows and jumped in on a couple, which was lovely. And I had 2 sellout shows, which was great. We did a songwriters gig with myself, Felicity Urquhart, Kevin Bennett, and Luke O'Shea, the very naughty Luke O'Shea. And we had a sellout for that on the Tuesday night. And then Sunday was massive at the Long Yard for me on January 26th. It was just incredible. We had an incredible crowd, biggest crowd yet.
Wow. And I went last year and it was a massive crowd last year.
Yeah, well, we had like 110 more or something on the year before. So you couldn't move. So I think we've reached peak in that sense, unless we start making people stand. But I don't think they'll want that at my show. So yeah, I'm very excited. We had a great festival. Releasing the new song was definitely more work, but definitely really proud of it. And it worked in really well because all the media is there, and you get to talk to everyone about your new single. So that was lovely.
Yeah, I saw that the songwriter session on the program. I thought, oh, Bennett, Bowtell, Urquhart, and O'Shea.
He kept saying that he thought maybe we should, consider a name change, BBUO. Like, sounds like BO, mate.
Or maybe yeah. Or maybe it's Bobo, I don't know, Bobo, who knows? But I'm sure that if you gave him half a chance.
He honestly, Luke, did the funniest thing I've ever seen him do at the end of the gig. Usually, you do the round and then you're like, bye, everyone. And there's not a finishing song because the songwriter isn't around. And Luke, he goes, oh, I've got a song I want to do. And he wrote a song on the spot called Waiting for the Flood, meaning when you go down to the Tamworth and it's like, 9:30 p.m. and you've been there since 8 o'clock, you're just waiting for the flood to come on.
Yeah.
And he just came up with this crazy song and we all joined in. Shit, it was fun. It was just so Lukey. And I guess you had to be there, but someone got some footage of it, which makes me laugh to watch. But he pointed, and he was pointing at Phil, to the guitarist Phil, to play a lead break, but I thought he pointed at me. So I just started riffing and making stuff up. He's like, what are you doing? This is my song. Anyway.
He should have been more clear.
Look, yeah, nothing is clear with Luke, that's for sure. But I do adore him. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the two of you are dynamic together and dynamite together, I should say. And look, I think you both lift any gig you're part of. So anyone who's checking out your shows, his shows, just go and see it is my advice. So on to Paper Cut. It is a song that was prompted by an actual paper cut. And I'm curious, at the point you got the cut and had the thought about that led into the song, did you immediately start writing notes for the song?
I wrote the song immediately. So what happened was I cut my thumb. I can almost still feel it. And I got this paper cut and I just said out loud, oh, it hurts, but it won't kill me. And I went, oh my gosh. And so I band-aided her up and got the guitar out and started writing this song. And it just, look, honestly, they're pretty rare. I think the last time I had a song kind of just fall out almost completely fully formed was Beautiful Liar. Like,
oh, wow. Okay.
I don't know, 13 years ago or something. So this happened with this song and I just sat down and wrote it. And I kept looking at it going, I think this is finished. I think this is really good, but there must be something wrong. Surely I can't have just written this song fully formed, but I did. And I honestly believe it's it's definitely a gift. It's like you've downloaded something from the ether, but there's also an element of just when you think about it, you've been listening to music, you've been writing music your whole life. Like the first time I picked up a guitar when I was 12 or 13, I started writing songs. With every chord I learned, I wrote a new song. So it's always been innate, but also I've been absorbing it. And this song definitely feels like going back to my roots where I first started learning country music, because I had no idea really. My parents had a pretty eclectic record collection that I would get in trouble for listening to because I'd always ruin things when I was a kid. You know, you weren't really meant to pull them out and scratch them and stuff, you know. I don't know why Mum was so offended. But she had like everything from Nana Muscuri to jazz records to, you know, the odd Slim Dusty. And you'd be like, what is all this music? And I'd put it on and I fell in love with Ella Fitzgerald and Dolly Parton and the Carpenters. Pretty skewed mix of things. And so when I was 14 and I'd been playing this nylon string guitar forever and I really needed an outlet, Mum found country music clubs existed and they were, you know, for families, and we're like, well, let's give this a go, you know. And I didn't know genre was a thing at that point in my life. Like I was listening to all those incredible stalwarts of music. And then, of course, I was listening to Bros, let's be honest. So, you know, like there was, and that's a reference for those of us who grew up in the 80s. So was it 90s they came out? Anyway, so I was, you know, listening to all these styles of music and I just thought that's how it was. I didn't know there was a genre thing. And so we went along to the country music club and they started to teach me Patsy Cline songs, George Jones songs, Merle Haggard, you know, Loretta Lynn, Emmylou Harris, all the greats. And that's, you know, Willie Nelson. That's, I think, where this song comes from, in deep inside my, you know, memory, my muscle memory.
Encoded within you, waiting to come out. Yeah. I'm so interested that you said Ella Fitzgerald and the Carpenters, because, and I love Dolly as well, but Ella and Karen Carpenter are two of my favorite singers. And when I first saw you sing live in particular, I remember thinking, I haven't heard a voice like this since those two. And I always used to like that tone of, well, Ella is, you know, Ella's everything. And Karen, I remember seeing a documentary about the Carpenters and they were talking about the fact that Karen Carpenter's voice was so soft, they had to mic her really close so you can hear the saliva in her throat sometimes. But that tone she had, that real clarity, you don't hear it very often, but and I'm being serious. When I first saw you sing live, like that's the closest I've ever heard to those two singers.
Oh my gosh, that is such a compliment. I'm going to write that down because
I'm actually surprised you don't know it about yourself, Lyn. So because it's just...
like it kind of, I guess I can see the correlation there. I mean, I used to listen to all of the way that Karen would phrase things like, we've only just begun. and I'm not even doing anything like she would do it. But the way she could sing so low, it was such a breath of fresh air because I'm an alto. So to hear someone sing low, and same with Ella, it was like, oh, so you can sing low and be good, you know, because there definitely is this weird thing about as high as you can go. If you can't sing an E flat, well, you're dead to me, you know, like a high E flat. And there's lots of girls that come to me for lessons over the years that have said, I just really need to be able to sing an F. Like, but what? Why?
Why? Yeah.
What is it going to do for you? Is it about touching someone's heart? And I've said this multiple times, when people leave an Adele concert, or whoever you want to say, right? Great singer. Whenever they leave their concert, do they go, it's because she sang an E flat, or it's because, or she wasn't on a game, she didn't sing an F tonight? Or you might sort of say that about Celine Dion, but even so, like, who knows what note, who cares? It's about the connection. It's about the connection. So this whole idea that you can't change the key of a song because the original was in a higher key, it does my head in. And so I just grew up singing the way I sang, and being an alto mezzo who could pretend to be a soprano for 5 minutes and run out of poof because it's just not where my vocals really are meant to be. And it's sort of like, you know, understanding there's a German term, and it's vocal fark, and it sounds rude, but it means it still makes me laugh.
German terms are gold, you know. Like,
I know. And it means the sweet spot. And so just because you can doesn't mean you should. You know, just because you can sing really, really high or really, really low, your sweet spot might be here, and that's where all the tone is. And I think for me, that's the important part. Yeah.
One of the things Ella is known for is scat singing, and that incredible ability to mimic an instrument's range. And I'm wondering if you actually did that yourself in terms of getting your voice.
Look, scatting and yodeling, shit, I'm terrible at them. Honestly, it's sad. I try scatting and I sound silly. And when I was young, I started to become addicted to yodeling. I think I was about 15, and we went to the Charters Towers Country Music Festival. My father and mother drove me up. We had the caravan, and on the way back home, I'm going, Dad goes, kid, you've been doing this for an hour. If you continue, I'm pulling the car over and you can walk the rest of the 10 hours home. And I was like, what? And this is my dad, who would say, you know, nothing I could do was wrong. Like I was the best, you know, in my father's eyes. Oh, you're the best at that, you know. And so for him to say yodeling, I sucked at. I kind of took that as okay, there's some things you're just not meant to do. And I think it's the same with scat. I think scatting is the yodeling of jazz. And if it's just not, I really do. And I think
I'm nodding in recognition. Go, yeah, that's correct.
And I just think if it's just not in your wheelhouse, it's just not in your wheelhouse. There are some things I think that we are limited by. I mean, maybe if I spent 3 hours a day doing it, but the payoff for me would be quite minimal, because scatting in country music is fairly rare.
It's very true, Lyn. But you know, there's always room for change. So now you talked about producing the songs that come through the Academy, and this is my segue to talk about you being the producer of Paper Cut with your partner Damon Morton. Now, when I read that you had done this, I loved the news, because I just thought, who would know more than you, for one thing, but also who would know more about your own music. So you have worked with Shane Nicholson in the past, and that's been a fruitful collaboration. At which point did you decide that this was going to be your gig?
Well, I mean, I just wanted to do something different, and it's really interesting. Carl Brody said to me years and years ago, Carl was the most beautiful human being, and we lost him to pancreatic cancer, but he was such a sensational songwriter, and he came to Academy, I don't know, it must be 8-9 years ago now. And he said to me, you should produce. And I went, oh, don't be silly. And so he kind of, to be honest, he put that seed in my mind, and I just wanted to do something different. COVID had put us into a place where recording became a bit like a layered cake. So you would send away a track, someone would send something back, and you'd slowly build it like this. And I wanted to get back to the studio where you sit in and play it all together, and it develops together as a group effort. And that's not for everybody, but and it can seem timely and expensive, but I think ultimately it isn't. It isn't actually that expensive. It's about finding the right team and the right studio. So I went back to where it all started for me. I went back to Rod McCormack and Jeff McCormack's studio on the Central Coast. That's where I recorded Bella in 1,000 years ago. And I went back to Jeff and I said, hey, would you be interested in being a part of this? We want you to, he's the best engineer I've ever worked with, and has the best set of ears. And he's really beautiful at being able to help you find a better result without making you ever feel lesser than. And he's a reliable, piece of advice sometimes. So you can go to him and say, what do you think, mate? And he's like, well, if I had to choose, I would choose this, but you do you. So I really love working with him, and Rod on guitar is just phenomenal. We also had, so Jeff played bass as well, and Josh Schubert on drums, and my favorite piano player, keyboard player, Bill Risby. So it was so nice to do it old school, to go in with the songs, play the demo, go, okay, this is the vision I have. Or sometimes I'd be like, I know exactly how I want it to go. Other times I'd be like, oh, I'm going this vibe, but I'm interested to hear what you guys do with it. So they're just such a beautiful team of musicians and experts, and having Damon there just to kind of, so when it comes to that process, he's more sitting in the background, but when it comes to the finer details, like for example, the orchestral, when we worked on, I nearly said orchestral relationship, but that's interesting. It's a Freudian slip. The orchestral parts that we did, he really, took the bird's eye view and was like, okay, we need to move this here and this, and I want more of this. So I stepped back. I was like, that's you, honey, you do that. Because I love everything she does. So, that's actually probably not the right attitude for Gabby. Like, yay, let's have more of that. He was like, that's great, but we need to do this, this, and this. So he was really beautiful with that. And we kind of worked out our roles really easily, because we both are songwriters together. And, after nearly 14 years as a couple, you kind of tend to understand each other a lot better. And I think that coming to these songs with a whole aspect of just being open to what happens instead of waiting to see what happens, but being open to what happens and having the final say in things. I must say I was really nervous the first day of tracking. Like, I was packing it in. I was just like screaming internally going, oh my God, I can't do this. And I got into the music of it and I was having such a good time. And we were working out the ending of a song, and Jeff goes, so Lynny, it's up to you, mate. You're the producer. So which way we're going to go, A or B? And I was like, oh, that's right. I'm not in the band. I'm actually going to make a choice here, but eventually you realize it's all instinct anyway. And honestly, it's art. So there's no right or wrong. It's just about what you think you feel or you need to do. And I think as long as I stayed in the studio in that mindset and wasn't thinking ahead of myself, like, oh, what will radio like? What will the people in the audience like? That is one way to write a song or to produce a song. But for me, it's always just messed with my head. So I've got to stay focused and stay in that moment, keep the hat on that I'm wearing, and not be anything other than that. So it's been a really great process, and we're nearly finished. We've just got a few little fiddly bits to do, some BVs and some mixing and a couple of little overdubs. But yeah, it's wonderful. It's been a great experience. And I kind of think, why didn't I do this earlier in my career? Why is it album number, I don't know, is it album number 7 or 8 or something? I don't know. So
if we count the BBU ones, yes, there've been several. So
yeah, there's been a lot. Yeah,
I mean, there's several of your solo releases as well. And look, I guess it's one of those things that it's It's just whenever the time feels right, you can think yourself into it, but unless it's feeling like it's the right time, and I often talk about like the rising tide of these sorts of things. You got to feel when you're at the point where that tide's about to crest or the wave's about to crest, you're like, okay, now is the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And overwhelmingly, I knew that. I knew it in my gut. And I often have that happen where I go, oh, this is going to be tricky. Oh, but I know in my gut this is what I need to do. So it just was the right time. And I'm really glad. I can't wait to do the next one actually.
Well, which leads me to a question about producing for others, because of course now you've done it for
Oh.
yourself, and given how much experience you have working with other artists, and as a vocal coach, but also as a mentor, your name comes up a lot with younger artists who talk about your influence on their career. So, in some senses, I think you've been producing for others for a long time. Would you consider producing other people's singles or albums or EPs?
I guess I would. It scares me, which probably means I want to do it. Usually that's how things occur to me. I go, well, that sounds scary and exciting. I would really love it. I guess I would probably do it for free the first time, just in case I screwed it up.
No, Lyn, I'm going to read you the right act there. No, your time is far too valuable and your skill base is far too valuable for that. I don't approve.
Oh, you don't approve. Okay. All right. Well, look, the answer would be yes, but it'd have to be the right person that I felt really comfortable with, that I could kind of be, because producing, you've got to both be the dictator and also be the soft place to fall as well. So
Right.
you have to know when to pull rank and when to be kind.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess it's a bit like being the director of the academy in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And also like being a band leader generally, I guess, if you have your own band,
Yeah.
you have to be the dictator to dictate how that song goes live, but then be the soft place to land if someone's not quite getting there, and you need to cajole them in a certain
That's it.
direction.
Yeah. And I think that when you work with passionate people, that's going to happen sometimes, because they're usually the hardest on themselves. And you don't have to tell people off if they stuff up. They're already internalizing all of that stuff. I've learned that over the years, that you don't point out the stuff ups. They've already worked it out.
Yeah. Yeah, they know, and they don't want you to point it out usually. So given how much care you do put into others within the country music space, with music generally, and I see it, I know a lot of people see it, wondering if there are people who do that for you. You don't necessarily have to name them, but there has to be that energetic flow, I think, for you to be able to sustain what you're doing, that someone has to be providing that for you.
Yeah, I have to say, up until last year, I had not done that. I had not reached out and received enough. And so it got to a pressure point where I wasn't really coping. And I reached out to a dear friend of mine who's also an incredible breath work coach and mentor for me. And so I now work with her every week. And she's like, I used to think, what do you need a life coach for? I mean, come on, like if you can't write a list, I don't know what's wrong with you. Like that was my horrible judgy opinion. And now I have a life coach, basically. She is beautiful. And I talk to her every morning, except for weekends. And I just kind of say where I'm at and what I've done. And she honestly, she's been such a wonderful I guess, therapist, because she's got all of that in her back pocket as well, but also just that reminder to choose myself first, because when you're a giver and a healer and an educator and a teacher and all the things, I would literally wake up in the morning and I'd have a shopping list of all the people I was going to check in on,
Yeah.
and reach out to and help that day. And I never put myself or my relationship first, which when I came to terms with that and realized that also I was putting Damon right down the totem pole, it's not healthy. It's not a good way to be. So only been about 8-9 months that I've been working with her, but it's really turned things around. And I've reached out more to my old friends. Okay. So that's Nicola Lay I'm talking about. She's just brilliant as all things. And breath work has changed my life because I started doing that when I did the she retreats.
Right.
And, you know, it really does do incredible things for me personally. It just changes, I guess, the whole way I feel. I can have a terrible headache when I start, and 20 minutes later it's gone,
Mm-hmm.
and do a little breathwork session, and I don't have the headache anymore. And you think, okay, rightio, that's not, you know, that's not some placebo effect. That's real, you know. So I think that's changed things for me, just recognizing to choose me. And I think a lot of women don't choose themselves first. So I've brought that into She as well, about how do you choose yourself first, and how do you find the time to be creative, and how do you, you know, prioritize your needs when everyone needs you. And yeah, reaching out to people like Becky Cole, who I've known for way too long, and we both know where all the bodies are buried. And it's like, you know, there was a time I wouldn't reach out because I was like, oh, I don't want to bother. It's just some silly, you know, whatever. And so now we're kind of like, she's been through a massive journey and a massive change in her life. And that made me realize that I don't need to not reach out to her, because I'm like, oh, she's probably dealing with a lot. Her helping me helps her too. So just kind of remembering those deep, long-term relationships, those deep friendships, like the one I have with Duncan Toombs, you know, he is my longest lasting friendship yet. 33 years we've been mates. And, you know, I think if I needed anything, he would be there. He's just, and a deeply passionate human being as well, deeply caring. So I'm so pleased to see him coming into his own. It's really cool.
Well, I'd actually say that's someone who's coming into his own. You facilitated as well, because I remember the first time I saw him sing his own songs was when he was in your band in a gig in Sydney, and he was the support act. And I would think that performing with you actually let him realize that he could do it, that actually you were there to support him, and he could fly essentially. And yes, I think we're all pleased that he did that. But it's just back to the point about women putting themselves first. I think it's not how little girls are socialized. It's not how women are socialized. It feels really confronting. But I have a yoga teacher who is really firm about these sorts of things, and she says, what's good for me is for the good of all. And I really like that angle on it, because she's someone who's she's like you, incredibly generous with her time, with her knowledge, with her energy, but she's also good at guarding that energy, because her thing is, well, I need to regenerate that if I'm going to serve. And she does see it as service. And also on the breathwork piece, as a long time yoga practitioner practicing pranayama, it is absolutely key to a lot of well-being. And I also saw something you put on social media. Was it just something you reposted about people who do breathwork who aren't ready? So anyone who's listening to this thinking, oh, I'm going to jump into this breathwork stuff, no, it's not for rookies. Like you've got to work yourself into it with very simple breathing, and a good teacher will be mindful of that.
Exactly. Make sure you're going to someone who has a history and not just done a 6-week course, because it's not actually, it's very deep, and it can leave people incredibly vulnerable because you basically, you know, bring up this stuff that you didn't know you were holding on to. Because I don't know if you've read The Body Keeps Score, but we hold on to all these things. And so when you do breath work, sometimes I'll cry and I don't know why I'm crying, but it feels fantastic. I'm like, I'm just going to go with this, but I know it's safe, and I'm working with someone who knows when is enough and when to kind of move in and out of these things, and also how to help me after, because things come up after as well for days and days if you do a big session. So it can be quite awful and traumatic if you leave somebody in this state of being which isn't grounded, which hasn't had a chance to come back into this place, this realm, or whatever, however you want to see it, this now, because they're still in that moment of trauma. And so I guess it's just, making sure you've spoken to people and and don't do a massive, like, full-on breath work as your first breath work. Just don't do that. Don't do that.
Do not go from the standing start. No. Before that book, The Body Keeps the Score, years before, there was a saying in yoga circles, the issues are in the tissues, which is it's a very succinct way of saying it. Yeah.
I think it's cool. And I think it's very true. And, you know, like when I'm going through emotional sadness or a shift or friendships are changing, you know how it goes. You set some boundaries and then next minute you don't have the same friendships you thought you had. And you think, oh, thought we were very close. That's interesting. That can be grief that you need to go through. And I always end up a bit sick. My body needs me to kind of sit in that moment instead of push through it. And I've got a tendency to go, oh, smile and carry on, you know, and it's like, no, you need to stop. So sometimes the only way I think my body can get me to stop and actually feel that grief is to get a bit sick. And then I'm like, oh, that's what it is. And Damon's like, well, duh. Well, yeah, I knew that. You're like, shut up. Okay, whatever. But
you know me really well. Go away.
Yeah, go away. Didn't ask for your opinion. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to see that shift in me, like to find the understanding of myself a little better and how I can, as you say, you can help more people when you look after yourself. So my journey in the next 12 months is, you know, to really work on my fitness and my health in that way so that just I can be better in everything I do. So I have more energy because I have a lot of energy already. I'm thinking, wow, what can I do if I was like 40 kilos lighter? Look out. So they're my goals this year. You know, last year I started on them and I started shifting a lot of things and some weight and it felt really good. So for me personally, it's about getting rid of inflammation in my body because I have endometriosis. So I find that when I eat low inflammatory foods and do low inflammatory things, like don't give too much of myself and don't put myself into drama situations, trying to help everyone else. If I help myself first, my inflammatory levels are lower. Like, and it's and that's not even woo-woo. That's like literally blood tests. So you know, working on how I can look after myself and I'm enjoying it actually. And being a producer is crazy, but part of that too, you know, being the creator of my own existence and the creator of my own music and then creating the production side with Damon is really powerful. And you know, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have done it. I would have been too scared. When Carl said something to me about it, I was like, I don't want that responsibility. If it sucks, I want it to be someone else who made it suck, not me.
Look, safe bet that it's not going to suck. And in fact, it definitely does not suck. And I have had you talking for a really long time. So I will close by asking you about those She songwriting retreats, because I know from other people I've interviewed that many a great song has come out of those retreats. Do you have any coming up?
I do. I've just opened up the Easter retreat at the Hunter Valley. And that's over Easter, of course, 17 to 21 of April. Basically, they're all about bringing women together in a way that is different to how the entertainment industry works, right? Because there's so much competition, there's so much social media, and I get it because I put my face on before I do a gig. I wear my suit of armor. But when I do these retreats, it's about us connecting on a different level as women first, and then let's write a song. And I think that it's very powerful because, you know, you cut the crap basically and just be real with one another. And you can all understand that we're all coming from different walks of life, different ages from 17 to like 60 come to these retreats. So there's women who are going through menopause and women who are having their first baby and women who aren't interested in any of that. And we come together and just talk. Sometimes the talking is more powerful than anything else. And I'm just loving them. There's something that I sort of fell into. It was in the back of my mind. These things happen sometimes. I'm thinking about something and it appears. And I had some women approach me and say, would you like to run something? And I went, you've got no idea how much I want to run something. Let me think of it. And I think about it and I put together like a test subject group. And now they're the original She's. And we meet every December now. That's our special She time. But it's just, honestly, it feels like what I've always done. It sounds crazy. I've been doing it for 3 years. It feels like I've done it forever.
Right.
It just feels right.
Well, it's obviously working, and I'm sure people can go to your website to find details. And the exciting thing for me about hearing about you being in the studio for Paper Cut is that you were mentioning finishing touches on what will become an album. So that's obviously down the line. So Lyn Bowtell, I could talk to you all day, but
I know. Sorry, I've been chatting so
no,
long.
why are you apologizing? No, I love listening to you talk and talking with you, but it's a Sunday. I'm going to let you go. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Sophie.